Greetings all and welcome to Esoteric Babble. Today we're going to continue investigating what the Buddha has to say about the middle path and how we can apply it to our lives. So let's remind ourselves that this comes from the Setting the Wheel of Dharma in Motion Sutta, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. And the Buddha tells us that the middle path produces insight and knowledge, and it leads to calm, gnosis, enlightenment, and nirvana. And something to keep in mind about nirvana, though we won't talk a lot about it right now, is one way the Buddha describes nirvana is that it is the absence of greed, anger, and delusion. So another way of thinking about this middle path is that it is going to help us overcome these three very negative qualities, these three poisons, as they're sometimes called. So the Buddha asked this question, what is the middle path? And he says it is just this noble eightfold path. Or he's going to tell us what this eightfold path is. Just a couple of words here quickly. Noble, I think, refers to the practitioners. It's noble because of its practitioners. Aryo, which is the word that gives us the word Aryan, it's kind of been ruined after the middle part of the 20th century. But in the Buddha's time, this word was used to describe people who were practicing the Dharma. Now, another thing to keep in mind is this is just an interesting parallel. In Pali, this word eightfold is atangiko. And you also have the word atanga, which in Sanskrit would be pronounced ashtanga. And those yoga enthusiasts out there, you yogis, will know that not only is that a style of modern yoga, but ashtanga is also the way that Patanjali describes the yogic path. In other words, that path has 8 limbs as well. They're not the same as this middle path. And it's also possible that Patanjali was influenced by this the Buddha's middle path. So here is the Eightfold Path set out in its fullness. We have the English and the Pali, and we're going to go through these one by one. Just one general point to make is that this is not something that you don't develop right view and then move on to right thought and then right speech and so on and so forth. This is a description of our whole life. And we have to deepen all of them. And they can help deepen one another. So wherever we start, wherever we are right now, we're going to have a certain outlook. And as we kind of reflect upon things, as we practice mindfulness and concentration, and we think about our right livelihood and so on and so forth, it will probably change our view. It will deepen, which in turn will probably cause us to rethink what right thought would be, what our right speech would be, and so on and so forth. So this isn't something, again, we don't start from number 1 and go to number 8 and then we're done. This is something that we're constantly practicing all of these and trying to deepen them. So here is the first of the 8, right view, or samadhi. This word ditti, if you go to yoga classes, sometimes you'll hear the Sanskrit equivalent, drishti. They might say, let your drishti be on a non-moving point. And they mean your gaze. But in this case, it really is a little more figurative. It's our view point. It's just our overall outlook. And also, sometimes ditti with the Buddha will mean speculative views, and those are always negative. So one thing about right view is we have to sort of examine what viewpoints we have that we should probably jettison or not hold on to. So, and another way to think about this is we're trying to see reality as it is or things as they are. The Vedantic example is sometimes we might walk outside, especially in places that have snakes, and look over and see a coiled up snake and kind of, maybe jump away. And then looking back, realize that it's just a coiled up rope. And so we constantly we want to see beyond the snake. We want to see things as they are. Right thought, sama sankappo. You'll hear this sometimes in meditation, like a sankalpa, an intention. So this has to do with thought or thinking. And I think different from the view, our outlook is sort of our overall, how we're seeing things. This has to do with, like, I think, specific thoughts. As we're starting to formulate a plan of action, we want the right thought. We don't want to, we don't want to have a negative thought. We don't want to have a thought that's guided by greed and so on and so forth. And that will help with right speech. Right speech is something where we don't want to, like, hide behind saying something like, well, I told the truth, but knowing that it really we're saying the truth to hurt someone. Right speech would be something that we would consider all of these. We would consider that there are many dimensions to speaking the truth. Right action, sama kamanto. So one thing about this word kamanto is it comes from this root kur, which gives us the words karma and in Pali kamma. Karma is something that we do. It is, and sometimes it's the fruit of the action as well, not always. But so right action it's kind of, this is the completion of the thinking. So we want our actions to be good. We don't want them to just be reflexive, or obviously we don't want to act on negative impulses. Right livelihood. This would also flow from the right intention and right action. We don't want to be engaged in some sort of livelihood that maybe it isn't directly affecting us negatively, but maybe it is destroying the planet. The Buddha mentions things like don't be involved in the trading of slaves or the making of poisons. So, this is something that we all have to kind of think about. Right effort. So when we're talking about effort here, we're talking about the effort in terms of what we would say in English like a meditation practice. So we have to make sure that we are actually doing that work as well. Right mindfulness, sama sati. So this is a big one these days, mindfulness. This word sati in Sanskrit, smrti, has the meaning of kind of like remembrance. So it's one way of, we might say meditation, but for the Buddha, mindfulness was to be practiced walking, standing, sitting, or lying down. So and those four postures he took those to be the only postures. You could run, but that would kind of be an extension of walking. So we're always to be mindful. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to sit and be mindful. We can walk, and anything we do, wash a glass, we can, driving our car, talking with people, cooking food, whatever, we can be mindful. And then the Eightfold Path here, right concentration, sama samadhi. A lot of people will say that concentration may not be the right word because that implies a kind of effort that isn't really involved. It can also be like this absorption into the object of your meditation. So this is something that, like all of these path factors, we need to each look into them. Samadhi is not only a Buddhist idea or concept. It's found in a lot of Indian spiritual teachings. It's definitely in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and it happens to also be the 8th there. I'll put a link in the description to a book I just read on samadhi that I found to be really good. One way to think about samadhi is that you would have an object of meditation. It could be a flame, it could be a mantra, it could be a colored disc. And we would focus upon that until there's no distinction between the object and us. So that's one way to describe samadhi. So now this was a whirlwind tour of the Eightfold Path. Notice that the Buddha doesn't actually tell us in this case what each of these would be. I've kind of mentioned a few things, and they don't, when we go through and start reflecting on them, it's not only going to come from the Buddha's teachings, but the Buddha's teachings will fill out some of these. Certainly right view is something that we'll hear, like the Buddha will give us some advice on what right view is, and so on and so forth. But I think that, 2,500 years have passed since the Buddha delivered this teaching, and I think we'll all probably, I think we can certainly avail ourselves of other teachings that have come after that as well. So, dear listener, I would deeply appreciate any insight you have into this. And for now, peace.